Hi everyone, it's Justine. A very pragmatic video today, how to clean shoes. It depends on the material, of course. I'm going to show you different types of surfaces, different types of materials, and what I would do to each of them. It's not painful. I use homemade mixes. I don't believe in specific products, blah blah blah, design, especially for this and that type of stain. I think it's more realistic to use what you have in your house. So nothing fancy, you will see. The first one is a tricky one, and that's suede. So I would start with a brush like this on suede. The hairs shouldn't be too stiff, too harsh. A toothbrush that has soft hairs would do the job too, but you would need longer. I scrub gently with that brush all over the shoe to remove first the dry dust. If I see a stain, I can brush there a little bit harder, but not too hard because you're on leather, so that's quite sensitive. If the stain is still here, then I can go in with a white eraser, also something you have at home. People say you can also use a nail file on suede, on the little hairs, to get rid of a stain. I say don't use a nail file because you're scratching away hairs that are part of the skin of the leather, so it makes the fabric thinner and your shoes would wear out a lot faster. So I would not recommend to use a file at all. If the stain is still there, I put a bit of white vinegar on a cloth or on an old t-shirt, some fabric, and I rub softly on the stain with that. Do not use dark vinegar on that, like balsamic and co, all those fancy sorts, because the result would be a stain. So always and only white, very clear vinegar. Then sheepskin is a special one, typically used on winter boots like that one. The surface is also not completely smooth. It's also a little bit hairy, like the suede, but the surface is a bit differently treated, so we also need to care for it differently. First, you can start with the brush, like for the suede, then with an eraser, and then if you still have stains, you can wipe them off, kind of, with a cloth dipped into a mix of cold water and white vinegar. Half cold water, half vinegar. Then you will need to rinse that off with water to wash away the vinegar, but avoid making the surface too wet. The fabric is not actually waterproof, it's only water repellent. So if you put too much water on top, it's going to absorb it and go into the shoe. For that, you can use a wet sponge, not completely soaked. You need to squeeze it a couple of times before applying it onto the surface so you have the right amount of water. Let the boots air dry, but before you leave them to dry, stuff the front part here, the toe area, with newspaper inside to preserve this rounded shape. The next one is leather. Typically on leather that is smooth and really flat, nicely tanned, a stain simply looks like a darker area somewhere. So to get rid of that, I use cold water and white vinegar, again half-half in the proportions like previously. Every time you do that and you apply the water and the vinegar, you let it dry completely and you will see the dark area of your liquid completely disappears. It leaves no mark, and you can repeat that until the stain has disappeared. Every now and then this kind of smooth leather might get a bit dry and it needs to be nourished. So you can use a cream like this, shoe cream, transparent one. If you have one like that, that works for all your shoes. Or you use a tinted one. This is black, but only if that's the exact color matching your shoe. So I would use that on black leather, period. For all the rest, I would use one like this. Don't even try to turn light brown shoes into dark brown shoes by using a dark brown cream. The result would just be one big stain on your light brown shoe. And if you have shoes that are in shiny leather, like coated, really high gloss leather, I use window cleaner and a tissue, and that's perfect. Then we have the type of shoe made of canvas, cotton, like fabric on the surface, typically one like that. I would always start with a brush and really brush, like don't be afraid to scratch it, it's resistant enough. You want to get rid of all the dust you can before we make it wet, because that's coming later, and if you make that fabric wet, it's going to absorb the dust. So get rid of the dust first. Then you can put this type of shoe into your washing machine very quickly, 30 minutes, 40 minutes max, that's more than you need. Delicate program and cold water. If you don't use cold water, the fabric is going to shrink. It's fabric after all. Rope shoes, like those ones, or like Spanish espadrilles, typical summer shoe, can't be washed. You also can't walk into water with them, or else the sole especially is going to become hard as wood. If you screwed up a pair of espadrilles during summer, you know exactly what I mean. The only option here is to keep them dry and use that little brush again and brush in the direction of the little braids one by one, not in the other direction because that would break the fibers. Rope is not a fine spun yarn, so to speak, so you need to stay in the direction in which it's going to not break the fibers. Rubber shoes like sneakers that are white or the sole of this wedge shoe can be cleaned with a bit more aggressivity. For that rubber area, and only if it's white rubber, you can use acetone-free nail polish remover or strongly diluted bleach. 1 portion of bleach, 5 portions of cold water, so 1/6 of the total is bleach, maximum, that's enough. And then you need to always rinse that off really well because bleach is that horrible thing that keeps eating up whatever material you put it on. If you're using nail polish remover or bleach onto a rubber part of a shoe, this is rubber, this is leather. Or on the black fabric shoes that I showed earlier, the top is fabric, the sole is rubber. If that was white, make sure that you don't touch the other material because that's too aggressive for anything else than plastic. By the way, if you have sneakers that have laces on them, the laces are basically fabric, so you can machine wash them with your regular clothes. Just remember to put them not directly like that into the drum, but into a net, the same kind of net that you use for your underwear. That's to prevent this long thing from getting into the holes of the drum. Big problem, so make sure to wrap them into something before you put them into the machine. Other than that, you're good. Then we have mesh, like on running shoes, this area here. Micro blah blah, microweb whatever. This doesn't like to be machine washed. It's not that stable, especially in the shape, and it might shrink. But you can perfectly clean that with a brush, as we did before. And you could also dip that brush into a cup of water in which you've put a little bit of detergent, like 1 little spoon. And then brush, brush, brush until it's gone. At the end, rinse it off with a sponge that's really soaked into water. It's okay to get that kind of synthetic mesh wet, just not into the washing machine. Thumbs up if you learned something useful in this video. I really hope you did. 2 more important things to remember. The first one is if you're not quite sure about which thing to use onto which material, do a little test first on a little corner, let it dry, see how it reacts, or use an old pair of shoes first to avoid screwing up your brand new pumps, if you know what I mean. Second point, if you do use something that has bleach or bleach mix at some point, please do that with the window wide open or do it outside, even better. It is toxic. Don't breathe that in. Try to avoid it as much as you can. Last but not least, next week I would love to do a full Q&A video. So if there's any question that you'd like me to answer about me, my job, fashion in general, previous videos, things that you always wondered, feel free to write those questions here below in the comments. I'll choose from there, from Twitter and from Instagram. Also make sure to subscribe to this channel so you actually get the answer to the question you've asked in a week from now, so on Sunday next week. See you on Capsule Wardrobe Wednesday before that. Take care and have a great Sunday. Bye guys.